In this prompt, we'll be creating plot outline 4, the last of our plot outline. Before we get started, I want to point out the models attached to this prompt are in the sequence of quality of output. So Gemini 2.5 Flash tends to adhere to the instructions to give it a good output. Mistral Medium is second. Claude 3.7 and Grok 3 give decent output, but they tend to create more of a blueprint than actually create a plot outline. So let's get started. This is going to be a multi-step process because we're combining a lot of information together, and so we need to take it a little bit at a time to ensure that the AI doesn't get confused and also doesn't omit things. So the first thing we want to do is step 1, and then it's going to ask for, but we're merging in subplots, so we're using plot outline 3, which is our most recent one. And we are going to start with subplot 1. Again, keeping on Gemini 2.5 Flash, but we'll save that. And begin. And yeah, sometimes it doesn't realize that it's already attached, so you just tell it continue. And the first thing it's going to do is say, okay, here's the subplot, here's the summary of it. Continue or proceed. And then it runs an analyzer on it to figure out which of the many ways that you can merge subplots into a main plot. And it's saying that the 3 that most likely match are interwoven braided, convergence or confluence, or nested concentric. Normally it's pretty good about telling you which one it thinks is best, but we'll go with interwoven. Alright, so we got almost 7,000 words here, and what it's done is it's gone through, let's see if I can find one. Yeah, here we go. So it's inserted the scene beats from the subplot to where they should belong, or where it believes they should belong within the entire plot outline, but it's rewritten the entire plot outline with the subbeats in it. So what we want to do is we want to save it as a snippet. And then we're going to clean it up of anything that isn't plot. So we're looking for any paragraphs that have that prefix of sub on them. Here's one. So we want to, and you should read through and make sure that that subplot actually kind of makes sense, and that belongs, that would belong in this chapter, either as a folded in or as its own separate scene. And then here you see this bullet is the instructions to where it's telling you, I think it should go in chapter 6, scene 10. And this is pretty much what you will get. You'll get the sub and this with Claude Sonnet and Grok, and they won't rewrite the entire chapter for you. They'll just say, here it is, this is where you should put it. So it's more of a blueprint of this is where you manually need to put things. And it may be something you want to do. I mean, Gemini 2.5 Flash is fairly inexpensive, and for my purposes, of doing novellas and stuff and the occasional novel, it's not going to get expensive. But if you want to use a different model, or if you've got a really long story, that could get expensive, because we're going to have to do this for every single subplot, rewrite the entire plot outline. So you may only want a blueprint and then manually go in and move things around or insert things where they should go. But we're going to assume that everything is where it should be, and we've got money to burn on tokens. Same thing here. If we think that, yeah, this is where it should go, we'll remove sub, so now it becomes part of the actual plot outline. I'll go ahead and finish this off screen. Alright, I went ahead and cleaned up the snippet, so now we're down to 6858, so lost about 150 words of stuff we didn't need. A recap, we chose the interweave, which is basically going to take and put subplot scene beats into existing scenes in the plot. Now, because this has two POV characters, for some of these subplots we're going to want to do parallel. So we'll have a chapter from one POV character's viewpoint, and then we'll have all the scene beats for the subplots from the other POV character in a separate chapter. The prompt will kind of give you a description of how the different methods for integrating subplots work. Probably would not hurt to look in the prompt component to learn more about the different ways, so that you become more familiar with what each option gives you. Or the reason we wanted to clean this up was we want to copy this into codex entry, and this is actually a new one for 2.7, 155A plot out the temp. So we're going to copy it into this temporary codex, because now we're going to, well, actually we'll just start fresh, but we'll run this again to integrate another subplot. And we're going to change this to that temp codex entry, because now that codex entry is our plot outline with one integrated subplot. And we will pick the next subplot we want to integrate. Let's try that one. Keeping a Gemini Flash. Same thing. You have to tell it it's there. Trust me. But yeah. Subplot centered on Lena is dynamic with Raphael. Yeah, okay. Here's what I was expecting that time. The first time around. This technique is best because blah 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 blah, and then there's a justification about why it thinks it. Cascading domino. I think I'm going to go with that one. Or nested concentric. Yeah, a combination. Huh. That's a new one. Never came up in testing, but let's do that. That's good to know you can do that. It's not a, you're not locked into a single one. Excellent. Using a combination will allow for direct interaction. I trust that you're logical. Most logical narrative flow. It's not an introduce a third POV, so we'll say Raphael's POV. Connective tissue is always good. I don't think we see her until chapter 5, 6. There it is, first one. And another one. And another one. Alright, so we're back up to almost 7,000 words, so Same thing, save it as a snippet. Now, like if you click on this star, then you can see what you call the last one. And we start the process over again of removing anything that isn't plot outline. There's the first one. So I'll go ahead and do this off screen and we'll come back. So I've cleaned up the snippet, and in my excitement I forgot what the last one, that the next thing you're supposed to do is, well, still in the same chat session, run the error check. And what we want it to do is say, okay, look at the existing plot outline in 155A and then look at the subplot you attached, and just like the other error check, see if there was anything omitted. But with something this big, there's always the chance that it's going to find a lot of stuff that isn't missing, or it's going to get confused. But well, this actually isn't too bad. It's only 1,000 words. And this is one thing where you would have to go through and do a spot check, because sometimes it says it's missing and it's only because like a word is off somewhere or it got confused. But it may be mentioning that, you know, well, these lines are missing because what it has done is it's turned them into prose, and so they're no longer exactly the same as they used to be. But yeah, you'd make an update, copy the revised snippet into 155A. So take what's there, Control A twice to grab everything, delete. $69.10, and that said $69.10, so we did get a good copy. And then you would repeat the process for every subplot you need to fold into your plot outline. And you can see, yeah, it does include the steps telling you that, you know, after you've run the first time, you need to change the base plot outline to this 155A. Repeat until they've all been done. Final step, start a new chat session and run plot outline for step 2 prompt. Stick with Gemini Flash. And what this is going to do is look at our current plot outline in note 155A, and it's going to look at the challenges. Once again, we're looking at making improvements to the story before we finally commit to it, to see if we can't make it the most exciting thing that has ever been written in the history of mankind. Took a couple of minutes for Gemini to go through the entire plot outline and come up with suggestions for better challenges. And while it is, you know, yet another kind of almost rewrite of the plot outline, this is a good example of why doing this over and over again can really improve the story. Here's an example, chapter 12, scene 18. So they've got a temporary habitat set up on Mars to hold in air, and of course if you've seen The Martian with Matt Damon, you know how all that works. But what's happened is they've had a micrometeorite has punctured the seal, and they've only got 2 options to repair it. And you know, Raphael says wants to do it one way, and Hemi says they should do it the other way. So they're going to bicker about it, and it's saying, well, it's not that it got hit; it didn't just puncture it, but it's hit a critical non-redundant structural beam threatening the whole structure. So it's not like they're just slowly losing air. It's like if they don't fix this thing, the whole structure is going to collapse kind of deal. And to make things even worse, Lena back on Earth is aware of it, and she's trying to tell him, look, you need to use option 2. You got to use option 2 for that structural beam or whatever. But the Cabal is listening in somewhere, and they've actually garbled her message so that one, it's delayed, and two, it's unintelligible. So they end up picking, of course, probably the wrong option for fixing it, and which is going to only make matters worse, because they're going to, because now they're going to be, one of them's going to be going, well, if we were going with my option, we wouldn't be in this position. And so now they're going to have to come up with yet an additional fix for the fix that they made because it was the wrong one. Yeah, so it's generated 6,704 words, but this is another thing we will save to a snippet. And then again, just looking, read through all of these, find one, if there's nothing there you like, delete it, and you'll keep the original challenge as it is. But if there's something that you do like, then go ahead and make changes to the plot outline in note 155A. I'm getting ahead of myself. That actually isn't the Drunk Critic feedback. That is improved challenges. Now it's time for the Drunk Critic to look at our entire plot outline with the subplots embedded, the improved challenges, and this might be one where Grok 3 will make a good critic. So that's one thing I do like to do is if I've created a bunch of stuff with one model, have the Drunk Critic be a different model, so it's so actually this is actually kind of short. Wow, that's for Grok. That's a miracle, because Grok likes to talk. But like everything else, you save it to a snippet and then look for anything that's useful that you can upgrade your plot outline with. But as it mentions here, that once you've made revisions to Note 155A, you now want to copy it into actually Note 155 plot outline 4, because the next set of prompts are going to be looking specifically at that codex entry. That's why this is called temp. Start a new chat session. And then here, because our next set of prompts is actually going to be converting our scenes into scene beats, and therefore generating a lot of content, what it's saying is if a story is over 10,000 words long, take and split this into multiple, separate it by acts. We don't actually have acts, do we? Because what you don't want to do is throw, 10, 15, 20,000 word plot outline at it and then tell, okay, go out and create 100,000 words worth of scene beats. So you might end up taking and doubling your, say 20,000 word plot outline into a 45,000 word outline of all your scenes and scene beats. And you can see we've got, so they will go into note 160 through 163. And then the output of the scene beats from source will then go into these 4 codex entries. I've made a last minute addition to the prompts because up to this point we haven't been using the plot structure we selected in the very beginning of this process, and now that we're getting ready to turn everything into scenes and scene beats, we should probably do that. So we will go back into plot outline, and now we have split plot outline. And what this is going to do is take a look at your plot outline 4 in note 155 and tell you where to break it into 3 or 4 acts depending on which plot structure you use, so that when you start converting the scenes into scene beats, you're only feeding a small chunk of the story to the AI instead of trying to get it to print out, instead of trying to get it to create scene beats for an entire 150,000 word novel. We just want to do 25, 30,000 words at a time so it doesn't get overwhelmed. And then there's probably a problem, the issue with some models where after a few thousand words they kind of get lazy and start providing less detail. So we want to prevent that by breaking it up into pieces. I've found for this one, Grok 3 Mini is the best at at least with this story and the plot structure I've chosen, so what I would want to do is pin this, and this is the easy one. This is Act 1. But if I wanted to add these plot elements for the hook, setup, inciting incident, it tells us, okay, Chapter 3, Scene 3 is where the inciting incident is. For now, I just want to break it up into acts. So Chapter 6, Scene 9. Let's go all in. Yeah, make it heading 2. There it is. And 12:17. So copy and paste. And again, the point of this is that even though this is less than 2,000 words, once we start turning these paragraphs into one or more scenes and dozens of scene beats, that's easily going to balloon to 4 or 5 times that. So we just want to give it the AI digestible chunks. So that concludes this video, and in the next video we will start tinkering with some alternative plot outline methods. If you have any questions, I highly recommend joining the Novel Crafter Discord. Thanks for watching and keep writing. Future readers are waiting for your stories.